The novel I read for this independent study project was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Casey. I kind of had a preconceived notion of the author and when he wrote this book and sort of what was going on because I like to research the book before I choose it for a project, and I like to research a little bit about the author. It was actually a very interesting story, which made my expectations very high for this book. And Ken Casey basically, he took a job at a Veterans Administration hospital where he was paid as an experimental subject for psychedelic and mind-altering drugs. But when he went into that, he was in college and he volunteered to do that for money, and that's actually how he came up with the whole story, and he wrote the whole story while he was on this psychiatric ward taking these drugs. Knowing that this whole story came about from a hallucinogenic experiment is very interesting to me, and one of the characters he actually saw during his experience, it was the chief. He said that he saw a tall Indian man sweeping in the corner, and from then on, he just, as he was at the ward, he wanted to sort of make a novel about kind of the experiences he saw and everything. So it's kind of interesting how that whole story came about, so I thought I'd just bring that up. And the way it still relates to society today is that these patients in this ward, this psychiatric ward, they have a nurse who has standards and morals for them. She treats them very dehumanizing. And still today, we treat people with mental issues, we still dehumanize them, and we still make them feel like they're not the same value as, like, the nurse versus the patient. Make them feel degraded and like there's something wrong with them. And that's still very prevalent today. This novel is still relevant in today's society because society is still portrayed the same way. A lot of people still feel that society is the same as it is conceived in this novel, and society as a whole is symbolized as the head nurse of the whole ward in this novel, and she exercises her power and control to control these mental patients and keep them constantly scared, doing whatever she wants, just manipulating them, giving them constant fear. And she shows her authority even if it's at the expense of their mental health or even their life. She's the symbolism of everyday pressures in society, like conforming and constantly feeling like you have expectations of you that you need to exceed every day. She just constantly put that pressure on them and always made them feel like something was wrong with them. The patients represented problems that people have coping in society, like being judged for their mental health issues so they don't speak out about it, or not having enough courage to get help, and there's just less focus on the importance of mental health. In this dystopian novel, what also is still relevant is the complex mental illness of men that is shown in this novel. It's still taboo today in this society for men to talk about their mental issues. It's sad that it's that way. It's just women are known for talking about their issues versus men to be this big, strong man. Some men struggle to manage their health alone and thus fighting against toxic masculinity. He withdraws into this deafness and this dumb sort of sideline character because he'd rather be in this delusion than be subjected to Nurse Ratched's dominance. Throughout this novel, the protagonist gives the ignored, crazy, judged members of society a voice, and that's how it's still relevant today. McMurphy is the light in the book. He treats his fellow patients and inmates as equals. He doesn't judge them, he accepts all the mental patients and doesn't question them or interrogate them the way that the nurse does. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is about the paradox of living in a democracy of only two political parties, which is the dominant theme of modern culture. And it has been a theme. The whole dystopian society, it's been a theme for years now. So that's also still relevant today. This novel is relevant to me because I sometimes feel like I'm trapped in this ward that we call society, and I feel as though I'm very expected to conform if I just try to be myself or do anything remotely different. And it's relevant to me that way. I really feel for McMurphy, and I understood, him trying to do other things but being totally shot down and just sort of killing his courage altogether. And I have been in that situation mentally, but also situationally as well. And mentally, I struggled for years. Like, I've had a lot of, mental setbacks. But that was in the past, and I'm just trying to move on. And I feel like I am McMurphy sometimes, always trying to make a different way about something, look at it differently. In return, I get judged for it, and I get criticism. Really, everyone's mind is different, everyone processes things different, and approaches situations different, and that is how McMurphy is relevant to me. But the novel as a whole, honestly, I feel like I have been in McMurphy's shoes. I have been in a very bad mental situation for 2 to 3 years, and it was like a fog that Chief described in this novel, and it really was hard to get out of it. It took many years and many different medications and this and that, and once I finally got out of it, I felt like Chief. I've improved every year, and I'm growing up and going to college in literally a month. Like 1 month, I'm going to be in college. And it's just amazing because I used to think that I would never have got this far. It just shows that there is happy endings, even in a novel about a psychiatric ward. The character Chief, who narrated the entire novel, Chief, who was considered deaf and dumb for most of the novel from everybody else except for McMurphy, he had a happy ending and he got out. And that's all that matters because McMurphy changed his point of view and helped him realize who he was and why he was there, and he helped other patients, even though it ruined himself and what he was going through. But all in all, very good novel. I enjoyed it, and 10 out of 10.